How you say that? Something like that, like.
Good evening. I'd like to call to order this regular meeting of the Rutherford Board of Education for October 1st, 2018. We're starting about a minute early because it seems everyone is here, and that's a nice surprise. So the first action, I would ask you all to please stand, and we will pledge allegiance to this flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Jack?
Yeah. So, ask the secretary to please call the roll.
Mrs. Ahmed?
Here.
Oh, yo. Dr. Olati?
Here.
Mr. Healy?
Here.
Mrs. Jones?
Present.
Mrs. Librera?
Here.
Mr. Mazzone?
Here.
Dr. Racine?
Here.
Mr. Rowland?
Here.
Mr. McLean?
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. The New Jersey Open Public Meetings Act was enacted to ensure the right of the public to have advance notice of and to attend the meetings of public bodies at which any business affecting their interest is discussed or acted upon. In accordance with that provision, with the provisions of this act, the Rutherford Board of Education has caused notice of this meeting to be published by having its date, time, and place posted on the bulletin board outside of the Borough Clerk's office, mailed to the Herald, South Bergenite, and Record newspapers, and filed with the Borough Clerk. Hard copies of the agenda are available in the meeting room, and the agenda has been posted electronically on the district's website at www.rutherfordschools.org. Regular meetings of the Rutherford Board of Education will be broadcast without editing during a 2-hour segment as limited by Comcast time constraints on Tuesday evenings at 8 p.m. on the Comcast Public Access channel and on FiOS channel 38. A video of the meeting may also be viewed on our website at www.rutherfordschools.org. The video link can be found by opening the Board of Education link and clicking on Public Meetings and then on Videos. Any member of the public who wishes to view a DVD of the meeting can make that request in writing to the board's secretary. Actually, before we go any further, I'd like to start with a word here from the superintendent.
Thank you. Today at the high school, we were very shocked and saddened to learn that one of our students passed away over the weekend. Again, out of respect to the family and to the student, I'm not going to announce his name. But we did have our counselors and our administrators and our teachers meet throughout the day with the student body to share the news with them and to help them through this sad event. And so our thoughts are with the family and with the student body, his friends, and the teachers who worked with this young man every day. So I'd like to take a moment of silence, if we could, in his honor. Thank you very much.
So moving on with the business of the meeting. Board members, in your packets were the minutes from the regular meeting of September 10th, 2018. Are there any comments, questions, changes to be offered for those minutes? Hearing none, I will ask the secretary to please enter them into the record and post them. And we have 2 special presentations this evening, which is nice. And we'll ask Mr. Hurley to please introduce the presentations.
Thank you. As you know, periodically we honor art students whose work graces the halls of the Board of Education office for a period of time during the year. And tonight we're going to recognize students from Pierpont who last spring into the summer, their work was up in the hall. So I'm pleased to introduce the Supervisor of Language Arts, Fine and Performing and Practical Arts, Mr. Salisi, and the art teacher from Pierpont, Ms. Nattiello. And I'll ask Mr. McLean to join you to present the awards.
Hi, good evening, everybody. My name is Brian Salisi. I'm the supervisor of the art department. And we've got a list of students here whose work has been hanging in Borough Hall. It's up on the 3rd floor by the Board of Education offices, but it's also right by the court. So some of the very unhappy folks who are headed into court, maybe they get one last look at something beautiful before something bad happens. But anyway, some of the work is really kind of fascinating. I was up there not too long ago and I was looking at some of the Picasso pieces. Very cool. So we're going to announce the child's name. If you're here, please come up. We have a certificate for you. You get to shake the hand of the president of the Board of Ed and just say congratulations to you. So Mariah Beto? Beto? Yes. Yes. She's coming. Come on. Come on up. What's that? Yeah, it's fine. Yeah. Come on up. Congratulations. Your work is beautiful. Picasso piece, right? Right? Didn't you make a Picasso portrait? Yeah. Well, congratulations.
Yeah.
All right. Riley Copley. Jasmine Gadia, John Gambale, Jua Lee, congratulations, Devin McGee, Shlok Shah, Sebastian Vicente, Ava Amatucci, Kaylee Haywood, Veronica Masick, Ava Statler, Rafael Wolos, I think Mom wants a picture too if you want to stand around. Yeah. There you go. Isabella Claveria, Thomas Conlon, Rain Lancaster, Ariana Medina, Ava Oliveira, Neil Rana, Sharyana Saxena, and Catherine Weigel. Even if they're not here, we clap for them, right? Thank you very much.
Well, we have several Pierpont teachers here for the next set of awards. And I think you must be giving too much homework at Pierpont since nobody's here tonight. But no, we'll make sure they get the certificates. And if some of the students have moved on to Union, you can leave them with me or get them up to Union School. And we'll present them. Right. Okay? Thank you and congratulations. And thank you all the artists, the young artists who are here tonight. Mr. McLean, you want me to go right to the next presentation? Could you let Kevin get this? As you know, or as I assume you know, for many, many years now, probably well over a decade, the Rutherford Education Foundation has awarded grants to our teachers who put in grants for programs to enhance the curriculum, to enhance the co-curricular program, things that perhaps just can't get covered in the tight budget constraints that we have, but yet bring so much richness to the curriculum. This year, the REF awarded grants in the total amount of $55,243.11. That money came, $52,094 of it from REF fundraising, and again, I'll put a little plug in. The REF does fundraising throughout the year, and they have a lot of nights, casino nights, wine tasting nights. They also have nights that don't involve alcohol. They have the Wizard basketball game. They have raffles. They have all kinds of activities. What's that, Ms. Jones?
Hockey game.
Hockey game, right? There is a concession stand at the hockey game, but you don't have to go there. And throughout the year, these events raise the money that gets then given in grants to keep our programs enriched and going forward. I also want to acknowledge that the former board president, Mr. Tom Casadante, who passed away several years ago, in his memory, the friends and the family asked that donations be given to the Rutherford Education Foundation. And over the last 3 years, and maybe Ms. Cole, who's here as the president, knows the total, but I know there was a great deal of money given over the last 3 years through the Thomas Casadante Scholarship Fund. And we appreciate that, and this year is no exception with $3,149.11. I don't know whose grant came up to be 11 cents, but we'll find it. But we certainly appreciate what the Casadante family and his friends have done to honor Tom's memory, and what the REF does every year to help fund programs. So I'm going to invite the president of the REF, Ms. Christina Cole, and Ms. Teresa Casadante to come on up to present the grants tonight, along with Mr. McLean. I'm also very pleased that we have probably one of our largest turnouts of teachers here tonight, recipients. You know, with everybody's busy schedule, sometimes it gets hard to be here, and I do appreciate that. And I do have something for you all. Your reward for being here tonight, besides the grant, is after you receive your grant and everybody gets the grant, I'm going to ask that you go maybe the back of the cafeteria, and we're going to take a picture for REF with Christina and with Ms. Casadante, so that could help them going forward with the grant. You're certainly welcome them to come back and be here for the rest of the meeting if you choose. If you choose not to, that's okay too. Right? So first up, these awards I'm going to present first are from the Thomas Casadante Scholarship donations. And the first one is one to the high school, is for Women in STEM, which will have RHS females interested in STEM to attend workshops at the Liberty Science Center, and then come back and turnkey that to middle school students. And again, I won't take the time to go through all of these programs this way, but we talked about things that are a little off the norm, right? So the high school students, females, getting them interested in technology and STEM education, go and come back and then turnkey it to the younger students. And the authors of that grant, Stephanie Curtis and Margaret Stacy. The second award grant, also from the Casadante Scholarship, Thomas Casadante Scholarship, is called Simple Machines for STEM Labs, and the grant will purchase basic simple machine kits to be used in STEM classes and will allow students to apply them to engaging Rube Goldberg type designs. That's Pierpont School, Jessica Saxon. A recurring grant that does an awful lot of good. Once again, high school students working with elementary students. It's the Read Across Rutherford, which tied in with Read Across America, which is done on Dr. Seuss's birthday. This grant enables our high school students to go down to visit the elementary students and read. And once again, that's Morgan Stacy and Mike Stracco. And the fourth of the Casadante Scholarship grants, a community of readers. It's down at Washington School. And this allows a freestanding library to be built, a small little library, where students can bring in books that they owned but now have read and want to share it, and they can have a lending and borrowing library that they create among themselves. It's a really novel idea, for no pun intended on the books, a novel idea. And that's Rachel Mejias and Laura Classi for Washington School Community of Readers. Those are the 4 grants from the Casadante Scholarship. I do want to thank Ms. Casadante and her family and friends for their ongoing support. And certainly, you know, as part of the award selection is done, I think, with the family in mind, to look at those interests that Tom really held dear, and STEM education and literacy, and were things that he always tried to guide the board and foster. So we appreciate, again, all the support over the years, Teresa, that you've given to us. Continue with the awards, and by the way, I failed to mention 27 grants this year given by the REF. And you'll hear as I go through them, different subject areas, different activities, different buildings are covered. Student Recognition Awards is a program to support positive behavior and develop a positive behavior response to student behavior in the schools. It's a grant award to Union School, and that went to Adriana Sorrell, who I don't think is with us tonight, but like Mr. Ursulisi said, we can still clap, right? An online program to enhance the use of grammar skills called Grammar Flip will allow students to practice grammar skills and help teacher guide instruction, and that grant went to Pierpont School and Mr. Sean Bach. Music First Junior. It's a program that allows students to use an online experience to learn music theory, write music, enhance playing opportunities for the recorder, and that goes to our 3 elementary schools, Pierpont, Lincoln, and Washington, and the authors of that were Ms. Connie DeFazio and Kristen Boyer. Two separate grants came out of Union School for their very renowned, now I guess we'd have to say, robotics club and class. One grant would help purchase the VEX robotic kits that the club and the class uses, and they compete in regional, national, and even international competitions, as many of you know. And the second grant would also allow the extra things that don't come in the kit to really enhance those robots and to get the program a step further. The author of both those grants is Mr. Bill Helfingstein. I don't think he's here, but congratulations to him, and thanks for his work with the Robotics Club. We have very young students in the district now, kindergarten, preschool, right? And this grant deals with building intelligence through iPads, where students can use programs on the iPad on a weekly basis to practice previously learned material and reinforce skills. It can be used in our ABA class or artistic class, and our regular, and it is used in our artistic class and in our preschool program, and that grant was authored by Morgan Deming at Washington School. In the same program, same students, ABA students and the preschool students, a sensory item grant to allow sensory toys and supplies for the pre-K special needs students. And the author of that grant is the preschool ABA teacher, Alana Sheshwick. Did I get it close? I think I did better than last year, Alana. A grant for Heroes and Cool Kids. Again, we appreciate the fact that Heroes and Cool Kids, which is a program where high school students go down and serve as peer mentors to middle school and elementary students. This came out of character ed grants years ago when the state of New Jersey stopped funding character education, and through the REF and through the Elks Club, we have been able to continue this very valuable program for years, and that grant is from Mr. Nick DeBarry at the high school for Heroes and Cool Kids. At Washington School, for our younger students, a sentence writing success program, which is part of the Project Read curriculum and uses multi-sensory approach to helping students write complete sentences, and that's going to be used in our LLD class there with Megan Gordon. As you know, we opened the Bulldog Academy last year, is in the second year, for our 18 to 21 year old population. And as these students transition to adulthood, there's a program which is called Enhanced Learning for Special Needs. In order to enhance their learning, for special needs, we needed some extra technology, and one of the things we needed was a smartboard. They're expensive items, and we have them in virtually every class, but we needed that one for the Bulldog Academy, and the REF provided it. So Mr. Ed Guy from the Bulldog Academy put in the grant for the smartboard for the Bulldog Academy. Mr. Guy. At Union School, again, literacy and improving grammar and writing, the grammarflip.com program, which is an online program helping students and teachers, again, with grammar and writing instruction. Megan Collins. Part of our world language program, and part of the state's requirements for that program, is to have different levels of proficiency achieved. And this grant for Loving to Read in Spanish, once again, had a program that students could use to help them learn to read text independently, to process the language better, and to function at a higher level of proficiency. That was for our middle school Spanish classes, and that's from Nadia Alvarado and Stu Smith. A very interesting title to this grant, Virtual Reality Meets Middle School. It sounds like a Fox show or something. But this is actually a program where students can take and create virtual field trips, which allows them to do a lot of different research on geography, history, climate, travel, economics. It's a really excellent interdisciplinary program. And that grant to Union School for the STEM classes was by Louise Hetzel. Electronic learning devices, we've been seeing a lot of those, and this program, in terms of the younger kids in kindergarten center, help with to master basic skills in phonics, spelling, sight words, and math skills. And there's a whole package of different skills with some really cool names like Math Sharks and Word Whiz and Hot Dots and the like. And this grant, Anna Caprio and Jay Fagenbaum. Washington, grade 2 class. This grant, in terms of making learning stick, encourages students to challenge themselves to take more difficult questions, and it gives rewards and challenges as you go along. If you've been at some of our meetings, or I'm sure if you aren't here, you watch them on TV because it's one of the highest rated programs, you'll see that we've been working on growth mindset, and this grant ties in directly with that, and that's Washington School, grade 2, Wendy Rossiter. Also, in our goal of wellness, mindfulness, growth mindset for both faculty, staff, and students, at Pierpont School, Yoga for Classrooms. And this gives the teachers the training to learn some basic yoga moves, to help students learn those moves for both physical and mental and emotional relaxation and improvement. I understand at Pierpont School today there was training for yoga. Mr. Fazio, is that true? Pierpont today there was training for yoga? Okay, yeah, so was that fun?
I enjoyed it. I have to say that I didn't know what to expect, and I found it rather relaxing.
Good. That's good. Yeah, I've never done it. I'm not very flexible, but maybe I should try. But this is a great concept that we started. Remember last year in Lincoln and Washington did it. Now we're moving it along. And this grant, Brianne Mahoney is authored the grant, and she's overseeing the program. You know, there's this thing we've been talking about the last couple of months about building improvements and referendum and facilities, in case you haven't noticed. A lot of things have changed in school. One of the things that's really changed is kids sitting in rows and kids having to sit still. Most of us during the course of our day, we don't do that. We get up, we move around. So this grant, Active Seating for Active Learning, provides different kinds of workstations with alternatives to traditional seats for students to be able to sit and move and work in a more comfortable environment. And this is in a grade 3 class at Lincoln School. And Liz Freitag is the author of the grant. And very similar, at Union School, Lori Stein put a grant in for flexible seating. Similar goal, to allow students the ability to have a more relaxing and comfortable work environment. So Lori Stein's grant at Union School. Thank you. To have our youngest students develop a real interest in STEM activities, learn coding, learn different levels of difficulty in a fun way of doing it. There's a Legos program that helps train and develop that mindset to move in that direction. And that grant from our G&T program at Lincoln and Washington School from Jenna Gustafer. From the high school, in our creative writing class, again with the eye on younger students as well, a grant that fortunately the REF had promoted once before. This grant allows for high school students to write and illustrate and publish children's books. So that's Melissa Dugard for publishing children's books through illusion, whatever word, kits, illusory kits. Every now and then, the REF sees a grant comes that's a little bit more costly than some of the other grants, and they look at the need. And one of the things, again, in trying to upgrade our facilities and make them more functioning and safe and usable by our students and the community, the 230 gym here at the high school is a small gym. It's the old gym, and it has big kids and not so big kids in there playing and going at a pretty competitive level. So to get wall padding around the entire gym to make it not only aesthetically better but safer for those activities, the REF funded a very, very large portion of a grant to replace the wall padding and encase the gym with wall padding in the 230 gym at the high school. And Mr. David Frazier, athletic director, is here to get the grant. When I went through Mr. Helfingstein before, I neglected that there's one here towards the end. He also had a grant for robotic sensors and microprocessors to help create drones, which is now part of our robotic class. So Mr. Helfingstein also got that grant. So 3 of them to Union for the STEM program. So we clap for that one too. And the last grant is one that's not directly goes to the students, but this is going to parents to help us partner for students. Parenting in the Digital Age and Media Awareness, a presentation with an outside speaker coming in the field of working with our children to correctly use all the digital resources that are out there. And there'll be a workshop presentation by a Melissa Straub, who does this presentation around the country. And that came from guidance counselor at the high school, Lauren Buckley, and the REF funded that grant. So thank you. Once again, I want to thank first the REF, Mrs. Casanante, for their continued support. If you were listening to the awards, you saw they went from preschool up to our 18 to 21 program. They covered grammar and writing and reading and science and math and physical education and health. I mean, just about every category. The grant through the yoga also works directly with teachers. The grant for the workshop we just talked about goes directly to parents. So it's not just a very narrow piece. It's a very large piece that the REF helps us fund. And although these things, we say they're extras, they really should be and are part of our curriculum. But with the budget constraints that are placed on us through the state, And through, some of these things are hard to get. So with programs like the REF, it really does enhance our learning. I also want to thank the teachers and the administrators and the supervisors who wrote the grants. They take the time to research. They take the time to look at how they can make their lessons or their programs better. They're thinking outside the box in some cases, and they submit grants that really, as you hear, bring some exciting programs and needed programs into the school. So this is really an example of a community working together, which is something that I always felt this community does, and I'm hopeful that we'll continue to do. And these programs really show that and explain that. So thank you to everyone, and we will ask the teachers if they would join the REF. Okay, Ms. Cole in the back and Ms. Casanante. We'll get a picture. And then again, we are going to do a report on student achievement. If you want us to hear it, if you can stick around. If not, thank you for coming. And the same with our art winners. I guess at this point, if you want to stay, you're welcome. But if you'd like to leave, that's fine too, if you don't mind me saying that, Mr. President. Okay. And we could probably continue. Student rep is here.
Yeah, we're gonna.
Our student rep is here. So we can let her do that.
So we will continue in our small circle here. We'll continue in our small circle here, and we move now to our report of the student representative, Margaret Lasky. Thanks. What, Margaret?
You can sit.
What? Yeah, you can sit and just.
You want to wait a minute for the noise?
Yeah, we'll wait.
We'll wait 1 minute.
We'll wait for this, so you don't have to shout. All right, we'll come back to order, please, and we will move to the report of our student representative, Ms. Margaret Lasky.
Hi, everyone. So last weekend was senior day for the football and cheerleading teams and homecoming. The dance was in this room, and the parade had great attendance. Both the band and the cheerleaders performed their halftime for the first time, and they did a great job. This weekend, the football team played Waldwick and Midland Park and continued their undefeated season. When you get the chance, the cheerleading team will be collecting money for the Brain and Behavior Research Foundation to raise awareness for mental health. They will be collecting during school this week and at the game on Friday. Heroes and Cool Kids started this week, and members plan on becoming more involved in the community than they were last year. This includes volunteering with the special needs sports team's Top Dogs and eating lunch with the heroes or the special needs children in the MD classroom. So this week is also the week of respect, and to raise awareness about respecting others and to prevent bullying, we decorated the announcement board outside the 100 gym with sticky notes with kind messages. It's actually like right outside over there. And these messages came in handy today when the news broke out that one of my classmates, Junior Arnav Karkara, died Sunday night. Arnav was a model bulldog. He ran track and cross country all while taking honors classes. His plans were to study at Rutgers to become an accountant. He loved to be around people and help everyone, and everyone has described him as just a really sweet guy in general. This news devastated the school, and I've never seen the student body so affected. The hallways were dead silent, and every single person was affected. People like myself who didn't get the chance to know Arnav were in shock and mourning. We lost someone very special at RHS today, and the school will never be the same. But we are a community, the whole district, and I know we can unite in memory of Arnav. I saw people taking sticky notes off the board and handing them to students with tears on their faces, and this is what all of the Bulldog community is all about. I saw kids being there for others, and the support at RHS is incredible. This Friday, everyone at RHS will be wearing red at school and at the football game for Arnav because that was his favorite color. I'd like to thank the class of 2020 for being so strong, Mr. Morano and Mr. DeBarry and Mr. Doran for being there for us, and for Arnav's family for bringing such a great kid into the world. tonight, I would like everyone to say before they leave something, at least one nice thing to someone, because you never know when the last time you'll see them will be. And I'd also like for everyone to keep the week of respect in their minds, as well as remember Arnav for the great person he was.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments for Margaret on this? Other than the obvious, Margaret, you are wise beyond your years at this point, and we appreciate your very heartfelt comments and the pall that's over the entire student body. Thank you. Thank you. And if you have some important test or want to pretend you do and have to leave,
Yeah.
that's okay. So
I
we
just
appreciate
leave so you don't have to hear me sniffle into the microphone all night.
Thank you so much. Thank you. So we move now to the report of our superintendent, please.
Well, tonight, my report's going to be about student achievement. And as Margaret's leaving, I do want to comment that there's achievement of students that you don't get measured by standardized tests, and you just heard a whole lot of that. Obviously, we're an academic institution, so we're going to measure and keep score. But you know, I've said this for a long, long time, that our students display a tremendous amount of character, tremendous amount of compassion, and I think I'd be remiss not to say that based on what she just said. She mentioned something else earlier in the report. She talked about involvement with this wellness initiative, these boards and things that are going on. And some of the things that, as we've had a new class of students come into the high school from the 8th grade, the class that was here last year with Mrs. Goodman. And the things that are happening in our new club, our unified club, where kids are having lunch every day with other students, and football team is sharing the uniforms and making that class be part of the pep rally, and you know, so much of what we hope to see in people as people get demonstrated every day, and the good news is it doesn't take the tragedies and the horrific things for this to get demonstrated. It gets demonstrated at the football games. It gets demonstrated at lunchtime. It gets demonstrated in the hallways. And when there is a crisis, it really rises to the top. So, we're going to applaud the successes and test scores, and we're going to try to correct the things that fall short, and and we're going to try to get the facilities better, and we're going to try to do all these things. But I think it was Mr. McLean who said at one of our many meetings in the past week, school is not just a building, and school is not just lessons. It's the continuum of interactions and services that we provide to each other. And I'm always very proud of our faculty and our staff and our administration. I firsthand been through what they were through today in a building, and to keep your head about you and guide it the right way. I mean, Mr. Brown and his staff and the students, it's remarkable. So I'll just wanted to comment on that. You received the report on student achievement, and it covers the tests, PARC, science tests, access for L's, dynamic learning maps, AP scores. This year, the SAT and the ACT test haven't been released yet. We didn't really get a clear answer as to why. They usually are. Once they are, I will share the report with you. This report will be posted on our website for the public in the next few days, which is part of the requirement. It is a rather mammoth report. The state has changed the template that they make us follow, and they are asking us essentially to present a lot of the same data in 3 or 4 different variations on the same theme. What I'm going to try to do in a succinct manner is walk you through some of the most important parts, and we'll start with PARC. There's a couple of things I'd like you all to remember. The state is now looking at are asking us to look at a 3-year period of park scores. I would be remiss if I didn't make this editorial comment. That park was presented to us all, and we presented it to the public as a way to measure individual student growth. None of these scores measure individual student growth. They do exactly what the tests have always done in the past and say last year grade 3 scored the following, and this year grade 3 scored the following. And the comparisons that we don't create, that we did not create this template. The state said this is what we had to report, asked us to compare this year's grade 3 to last year's grade 3. There's a certain value in that, but it's not what the test was supposed to be about. And even when you look at last year's grade 3 to this year's grade 4, you're looking holistically. So 5 new kids moved in, 3 new kids moved out. It was supposed to be really an individualized tracking to see how, Johnny or Mary did going through the school system. And it really doesn't do that. And as you know, we're one of the few states in the country now that still use park. And as you know, the governor has said it was going to go. But as you also know, the legislature is not so sure. And we have a test that we're going to give in the spring, which we were told was going to change, but now we're told, we're not too sure. So I think we have to keep that in mind as we look at this. It doesn't minimize, or change anything. If we do well, we don't do well, but it's a little disappointing. And, I hope we don't broadcast all the way down to Trenton, but it's a little disappointing that what they said we were going to get, we haven't gotten. Second thing I want you to keep in mind is that the number of students over the years that we've tested have decreased. More students are opting out, even at younger ages. In NJASC and HESPA, opting out never existed. But now, especially in the high school level, you see a tremendous, and we'll get to that when we look at the scores. When you looked at the numbers, and we're not going to go through all of them, I'm going to put a couple of pages and point some things out. You basically want to see the 1 and 2s decrease as you go through the years. That's the lower score. So if any place where we dropped in 1 and 2, that's a good thing. Any place where the 4 and 5 went up, that's a good thing. 3 is kind of a gray area. If 3 went down, but 4 and 5 went up, that's good, right? If 3 went down, but 1 and 2 went up, not so good. But once again, I want to caution you and caution whoever in the public looks at this when they get it, you're comparing this year's 4th grade, well, actually last year's 4th grade to the year before. So it's not necessarily a fair comparison, or a comparison that we're supposed to be making, right? Also keep in mind that although the state says 4 and 5 is what it takes to pass, for certain of the high school graduation requirements, 3, 4, and 5 is what you need. So where they announce that a 3 is not passing, it can pass your graduation requirement if you score a 3 in certain levels, in geometry and algebra 2. So if you fail the algebra 1, then a 3 is okay. If you fail English 10, then a 3 is okay in English 11. And you'll also notice that we're required to give you the comparison between school scores and district scores. And the only place that is, there's only 2 places where that counts, Washington and Lincoln, grade 3, and Algebra 1, because the majority of our kids take Algebra 1 in Union School, but they also take it in the high school. Everything else, we have 1 school, so it's the same, okay? A quick analysis, if you look it over, indicates that we were above the state average in passing that 4 and 5 on 17 tests and below on 4. I'm talking about last year's scores. The 4 that we were below are very easy to understand, I think, and we'll talk about that a little bit. We don't want to accept being below the state average, but we'll talk about where we laid behind and why that's not surprising. Even though it is supposed to be about student growth and not grade level comparison, it is worth noting that we improved on 17 grade levels from last year and fell behind on 4. And if you take a rather unscientific or statistical, maybe accurate look, where you try to find growth, there's a couple of examples where, for example, grade 5 math, this year 13% of the students scored 5. And that was lower than last year's grade 5. However, last year's grade 4th only had 1% scoring a 5. So where the state is saying we fell behind, we really had the same group improve. It's difficult to get a real good handle on this. You'll see how our supervisors and teachers have tried. Language arts, I think, were pretty outstanding. Grade 3 through 9 averaged 12% more scores on 5 than the state did. So if you take up all our scores and you do the average on that, and on some grade levels this year, the 5 was 41%, 39%, 30%. In the 16-17 school year, we only had 4 tests overall where 20% or more of the students scored a 5. This past year, in 2018, we had 7 tests, almost doubling, where 20% of the students scored a 5. I want to point out a couple of pages to you, and again, if there's any other things you have questions when I'm done, you can certainly ask. But if you go to page 4, which is the 3-year comparison, and you look levels 4 and 5 in language arts, and levels in the district column, you'll see that we declined, went a little backwards in grades 7 and 8, and grades 10 and 11. And you'll also see that in levels 1 and 2, where we want to go lower, we went lower almost everywhere except at 7, 8, 9, and grade 11. Grade 10 and 11 is going to be a problem. Even grade 9 when we get to math, because those students can fulfill their high school requirement on the test in grade 8 and 9, and grade 10 in language arts. So the opt-outs increase, the students who take the test, or students who have failed the test already. Sometimes students take the test and don't really give it an honest effort. You'll also notice in red at the bottom of your page that grade 11 does not include students who took an AP test. Their scores don't count. Yet in grade 11, those would be some of your best students, and their scores don't count. We don't make the rules, okay? So, why they don't count?
They don't count even if they took the test?
So grade 7 and 8, as you're going to see, we took a good look at in terms of why our scores may have declined. However, I'll get to that later on. We took a look at where the interventions are. In math, on the next page, you'll see where we want to decline, in levels 1 and 2, we did in every place but Algebra 2. And again, Algebra 2 is not the graduation requirement if you pass Algebra 1. And the great bulk of our students, as you're going to see, pass Algebra 1 in 8th grade. So they've already fit their graduation requirement. You'll also notice that the 4 and 5s went up almost everywhere except grade 5. And you'll see that the decline was in the higher achieving was also in the high school. Okay. Another page of interest. Not to say the others aren't interesting, but just for the sake of time and trying to get some clarity, is page 8. And this shows a comparison of the district to the state. And you'll see that if you go down the level 5 district and look next to it, level 5 state, there's a couple of cases where we're behind, again, grade 11, grade 3, but we're at or above, in some cases significantly above. For example, grade 7, where we had 40%, almost 41, level 5, where the state average is 28. Also keep in mind that even on grade 3, where we didn't do well on level 5, we scored nearly 63% at level 4, where the state was at 43. So if you add together level 4 and 5, we're at about 70%, and the state's at 51. So in looking at, that passing range, we are well above in almost every area when you combine 4 and 5 together. And you'll see down below, the level 1, the level 2, in most cases, we are significantly lower than the state. Even in the grade 11, where we said the students may not be motivated, right, to take the test, the best and the brightest aren't taking the test, we're at 13% and 25, the state's at 22 and 16. A very similar story in mathematics, which is the next page. We're either at or close to the state levels, or well, we're at or above in terms of 4 and 5, and we're doing better level 1. To give you an example, level 1 in Algebra 2, where we're saying 21% of our kids are scoring level 1 because maybe the test doesn't mean much for them, or maybe they're the kids who are more challenged with math because they failed the Algebra 1, the state's at 31% down there. So it's not just a Rutherford issue with some of these scores. But once again, when I look at grade 4, when we're right at the state with level 5, 7.5 to 7.6, we're also 12% higher with level 4. So our achievement is, we have some room to improve, but I think we're doing pretty well. And going back to the old HESPA format and the graduation format, if you put 3, 4, and 5 together, we're kind of where we were with HESPA, which was always pretty good. I'm going to give you a new page 14. I have it here for you because it was just a typographical thing. Level 5 district, that's a district-wide school. And I'm not going through the district because they're the same as the schools except for that one area I mentioned. It should be 14%, and I have that for you. I'll give it to you so you can replace the one you have. Okay, it should be 14. I have a new copy I'll hand out to you. That just was a typo. Okay, jumping ahead to page 19, and 19 all the way forward to page 26, I think it is. I'm sorry, it's page 28. These are subgroups and color-coded barcodes for subgroups. None of them are very surprising to me. Keep in mind that a subgroup has to have a number of 20 students to count. So per grade level, if there are not 20 special ed students, okay, that subgroup doesn't count for that grade level. The scores count in the aggregate, but not in the grade level. So we have some of the subgroups in Hispanic or Asian or Black or special ed or English language learners. In some of the grade levels, they're there. Some they're not there. That just means there's not 20 in the group. I think you'll see in looking at these what we expect in terms of how maybe language, economic, special needs all play a part in achievement. Now, I will tell you that what the state doesn't have us report is pretty helpful. And if you go to page 29, you'll see how that works. This is a rather detailed, and Mr. Ursulisi is here, and Mr. Ursulisi did half of what you see here. Mr. Ursulisi and his staff did the work of looking at different indicators, different standards, where on the questions, when we get the full report that we don't report out to the public, we'll see what standard a question related to. And we can then look to see if we did poorly there, take a look, do a little data mining, go into the curriculum, go into the lesson plans, and say, these are some things maybe we can do to try to address this. And what you have, again, I mean, you can certainly look at this, about 11 pages or 11 or 12 pages of language arts and math, where you'll see how many students were assessed on that skill, which means there's maybe 179 in the class, only 85 were assessed. Now, maybe more than 85 took the test, but maybe only 85 answered that question. And then certain things that we will be doing to try to address what that skill teaches. So you'll see things like IXL, Ames Web, Khan Academy. These are online, web-based resources. You'll see different textbooks. You'll see different ancillary readings. You'll see teacher-made problems or workshops or SAT-type questions or PARCC-type questions. Throughout this, you'll see the different interventions. The interventions are not only part of this report, they're part of what the curriculum has to include and what lesson plans need to include for both district level acceptance and also CUSAC monitoring acceptance. And all these programs are in place. So having things like IXL and Ames Web and Khan Academy at our fingertips allows, and those are just examples, but we have others as you'll see there too, allows the teacher, allows the supervisor, allows the principal to say, hey, in this area, we have some tools right at our fingertips to use with students. Okay? So where
Excuse me, by the grade level then, the standard that we're seeing, for instance, on page 29, there's one for grade 3, one for grade 4, but you go to grade 7, there's 2. What was it?
These are questions where we didn't score well.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there was some cutoff that we used to filter those.
Right. And Mr. Ursulisi, if you don't mind, when you decided how to cut off, was it students that bombed the question? How did you determine that this question, this standard you were looking at where another you would not?
Anything below, where we scored below the state in any standard.
Okay. All right. Okay. So, right. And look, in doing this data mining, and, the teachers and the supervisors aren't neglecting the other areas. And even if we did well, you want to continue to do well, right? But this was, a required and I think an intelligent requirement to say, what are you going to do to address areas where you fell in love? Okay. So again, not to go through them all, they're there. And this is an organic document. This was prepared when we got the full reports, which only come in, well, we got them within the last 60 days. Because by law, I have to report to the public and the board within 60 days. And if I waited till October 22nd, I would have missed it. So this all happened, these interventions and this data mining, in the last 60 days, of which 30 of them was August, right? So this is an organic document. It's going to continue to grow through trial and error and more research as we go through. Okay?
So not that it would ever happen if they sent it to you at the end of June?
Well, I would have to report it within 60 days. They're never going to happen. Yeah. So it would be a summer board meeting.
Yeah. We
would have, instead of 4 people, we'd have 2. Right. See, and the 4 people don't even realize I'm talking about them right now. They're just right. Okay, so that's PARCC in kind of a nutshell. I mean, there's tons of information here. The bottom line is we did pretty well. Where we didn't do well, I want to mention Algebra 1. Keep in mind that 8th grade, if you look at, and I will mention that. Let me just go there, and then we'll get off PARCC unless you have any questions. Bear with me one second. I wish I could find the page for Algebra 1. I thought I marked it. But without looking specifically at the numbers, in Union School in Algebra 1, we are, knocking it out of the park to keep the baseball playoff thing going, right? I mean, because they're our best students. And we don't do so well in the 8th grade math because they're the most challenged students. Then when you get to the high school, Algebra 1's not so good. Because the kids who are taking the Algebra 1 test in high school are the challenged kids who took 8th grade, some of the kids in our special classes, or kids who failed. So, when you have to keep that in mind when you look at these scores. And that's another area. Some of the areas we did the poorest on, Algebra 1 in high school, We understand why. We still want to do better, but we understand why. 11th grade, 12th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, we understand why. We still would like to motivate the kids to do better. And we'd also like them to give their best shot, because this is where, and I think Brian can attest to this is where the data mining becomes difficult, because if you have, people that are not taking the test or not giving it full effort, it's hard to make a good judgment on where something's lacking. But those are, concepts that we keep fighting the good fight with. The areas like grade 7, I think it was in math, where we didn't do as well as we'd like, in grade 5, and those are areas we're going to dive in a little deeper, because there isn't a logical explanation for that. But we're also going to take a look at the individual students' growth, which takes a lot of work to see, is it really grade 7, or is it that last year's grade 6 students were, again, this is hypothetical, were a little weak, and maybe they've grown, even though they haven't grown to the level we want, which is what the test should be. So before I move into the other areas, which will be a lot quicker and I think and a lot more straightforward, any comments or questions about Park?
You knew I was going to ask you at least one. You answered almost all my questions. When I saw these standards to be improved, I was thinking about if this was something that was listed last year, and if there was a way to track how the students did this year against last year's standards to be improved. Like, is there a way to look at this year's test scores to measure that against those standards from last year? Yeah,
part of the comparison and part of the demo, we have the more detailed reports on student growth. You'd have to look, like I said, at the individual student, right? Which they don't really give you in any of these reports. It's doable, and we do look at it, and we try to look at growth and improvement. Brian, do you have any comment on that?
Yeah, I'm just thinking, I did a similar report last year.
Keep in mind that the report, we did these internal reports. This year, they're required to be part of the official public report. So you may not have seen these last year because we didn't put it out to the public, but they were done internally. But go ahead.
Yeah, I did a similar report to what you have now last year, and anecdotally, as I was looking at them, I didn't prepare a specific report to show, last year we were weak in informational text grade 9, 10, finding main idea, but this year we were good. But that would be a fairly easy thing for me to do. I mean, I could easily do that. The Park reports that we get, they don't do that for us. They follow kid to kid to kid. So it would take a little bit of time, but yeah, I could certainly do it.
But I think to Dr. Alati's point, regardless of whether there's a formal report that gets made to me, the board, the public, or anybody else, I know that we use this to check lesson plans.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Teacher assessments. Keep in mind that in grades 1 or 2, I think it's 1 to 8, we use Linkit as a baseline assessment, which is aligned with Park, and we do that 3 times a year. And that's internal measurements, and we get a very detailed report, very similar, in fact, more detailed than this.
Yeah, Linkit is Park predictive. Linkit. So it will actually give us where the child is at any given point that they're assessed on it, and it'll give us a prediction as to how they will score on the actual Park assessment. They're partnered together.
So, in the building level and in the department level, if we're focusing on 6 or 7 or 4 standards on grade 6, when the Linkit assessment's given, it's my belief and certainly my hope that the teachers who are doing the interventions are going to look at those 4 standards, and they're going to see how we're doing there. And we do have Linkit meetings on the building level where the scores are shared and discussed and analyzed. So I think the answer to your question is formally no, practically and functionally yes. And I've said before at these meetings and at other meetings, I think the greatest benefit or a benefit, maybe the great benefit of Park, has been the fact they give us such detail about every question. And they're linked to standards, which allows for a discussion about the standard. And, sometimes it's hey, we're doing everything we can, and, we just have to try to do it better, or we just have to try to get the kids to take the test, or we have to try to, but a lot of times it's more than that. It's looking at different ways to, as to present the material.
Thank you.
Any other questions about Park?
Mr. Hurley, as far as the advanced placement results, which are very...
I'll get to those.
You're going to get to that?
Yeah, I'm going through the whole book.
That's what I was wondering.
Yeah, good news or bad news, I'm going through the whole book. All right.
I just want to make one comment on the Park results. So recognize that this has been a growing pain for the district, as it's been for every district, to roll the test out and all the details that go with that. But certainly appreciate the thought that goes into looking at the results. We recognize that no standardized test is perfect, but yet there's something to be gleaned from everything that we get. And so to be able to look at this and pull out, what are the pieces that are actionable, what are the pieces that that can at least serve as the basis for a healthy discussion about things that we can continue to improve on, I think is really good practice. So I commend you all for spending the due time on the process.
Thank you. And the last word, maybe, unless there's other questions about Park, from the very beginning, and maybe some of you remember the first meeting we had years ago about Park, and there was the people complaining about it and talking about it and so on. And one of the things I said then, similar to what you just said, I mean, we don't control what the state mandates us to do, right? So what we do is we look and we try to, first of all, I can understand why certain grade levels are low, and I get it, and it doesn't make me angry or it does make me think we're doing a bad job, but I still don't want to be low. I'd like to do better. And I also think that, if people just accepted the fact that this is not arduous, it's not taking away, they're all tied to the standards we're teaching. So we're not teaching for the test. The test is measuring what we teach, right? And if we had more folks taking it and more folks giving it an honest effort, what we glean from it would even be more valuable. And I am very proud of the board, and I mean that sincerely, and the community that doesn't get crazy about these tests. It doesn't say, oh, how come we're not all scoring here and there? And that was true when we had HESPA in New Jersey Ask. I think as building principal, I mean, we certainly were concerned when scores weren't good. We were happy when they were good, but we've never thought it was the total measurement of what we do. And I think keeping that in mind is more reason to take the test, because we're not judging any student, and we're not judging teachers, and we're not judging administrators based on one test. But the more good data we get coming in, the more we can use it to our advantage. And Brian and his teachers, and Danica Schmedding and her teachers, right, work very hard at trying to figure all this stuff out. They don't just dismiss it. So, okay. Now, moving on to the science test. If you look at page 41, you'll see that the results of last year's test have not yet been released, and because the assessment was a pilot for grades 5 and 8, the results of the spring test will be used for from 2017 will be used for our monitoring this year. So last year around this time, the state announced they were changing the science test from grade 4 to grade 5. And they announced it right around this time, which meant that the same students who were tested in grade 4 would have been tested again, and the curriculum was not really aligned with what they wanted with the test yet. And there was so they said, okay, we didn't make it clear who we were testing, so it'll be a pilot this year, and they don't report it. So what you see in the science test is the same report I gave you last year. Same numbers, where we did better than the state, about where, this is one of the last places that they still use district factor group. We use it here, we use it with the budget. You don't see it anywhere else. And we did at or a little below or a little above, the district factor group. And this was the same report we shared last year, which will be part of our monitoring next year. The tests that we took last year we will get them eventually, but they're not for publication and they're not for monitoring purpose. They're just used as a pilot for they could assess the test. Okay? So we had discussed these scores last year. So before we move on, any questions about that? I'm sure I answered the question last year. Okay.
So just by way of reminder, which schools are in our district factor group? Is that only areas around here?
No, it's, well, yes and no. But Emerson, I'm trying to think, Teaneck, Fairlawn, Joe, some of the others from the budget, Westwood maybe, is that one?
Yeah, Westwood. Teaneck, you said?
Teaneck, Fairlawn, Emerson, Westwood.
Yeah, so it's 10 or 11 we go through on the budget.
And all of them are, you know, good, because the district factor deals with socioeconomic. So they're all, you know, as we are, a good district and good communities. All right, page 46, Access for L's, is the summative assessments for English language learners. It assesses, we used to be called ESL, okay? English second language, now is ELL. It looks at listening, speaking, reading, and writing, and it goes through 6 proficiency levels from entering up to reaching. Students need to get up to that 3, 4, and 5 level. I'm sorry, 4, 5, and 6 level in order to go out of the program. And although there aren't detailed reports of the score, we had 42 students last year in ESL classes, and 26 or 62% of the students were able to exit the program through the testing and move on. So that's, you know, a good number. We'd like to even get to 80% if we could, but 62 is a pretty good number. And we have the breakdown of different grade levels of where students are. It's interesting that students who come into the program in grade 12 are already at the 100% level with the expanding. Maybe you don't stay in the program more than a couple of years. Okay. Anything on that? Dynamic learning maps is a system of an alternate assessment for the students with the most significant cognitive disabilities. We only have, I think, about 7 or 8 of those, I think, students. We don't report on the scores because anything under that low of a level, the concern that the state has and the county have and that we share is that it would be too identifying to put scores out. Okay? The class profile for 2018 is included in this report. A graduation cohort was 93.5%. If you recall, I've been saying since they changed how they did the graduation rate, it used to be if you had 200 seniors. I'm not a math guy. Let's say 100. 100 seniors start September 1st, and 98 graduated. You had a 98% graduation rate. Now it says if you have 100 freshmen 4 years before their graduation date and 95 graduate, you have a 95%. Students leave as long as the other school claims them, which in the state of New Jersey they have to through New Jersey Smart. They become that student and not yours. But through the course of 4 years, you have students who get held back because they don't meet their credits. You have students who lose credit due to attendance policy violations. You have students who, due to special education needs, need an additional year. Those students in the past didn't all count against you. Now they do. And it's fine. I mean, how many kids enter and how many kids graduate, that's a fair assessment. But on the other hand, we also get potentially penalized in our state report if we have too high of an absentee rate. And the remedy, we're told by the state, is to make sure you enforce strictly and fairly your attendance policy, which if you enforce it strictly and fairly means the student loses credit. So then you don't get penalized over there, but then you get penalized over on your graduation rate. Yeah. It's been a rough couple of weeks. Maybe I sound a little grouchy. I don't know. 93.5 to me is not a bad rate at all, and I know how they changed the math, right? I mean, last year I think we had one student not graduate on time with his class that started as a senior in senior year. Okay? Last year, 4-year colleges, 75%, 2-year colleges, 16, total attending college, 91. Keep in mind, with a graduating class of about 170 something last year, that's a small number of kids, right? 4% went to a school of non-college grade, which means a vocational trade school. So 95% for further education, which means maybe 3 or 4 students who did not. 3% went to employment and 2% to the military. Advanced placement. Every year, our number of students taking the AP test and the AP courses grows. It went from 142 in 2017 to 179 last year. It wasn't that long ago that the number of tests were in the 90s and low hundreds. And despite that, our success keeps going up. This year it went down a little, but still very good. 73% scoring, the passing of 3 or 4 or 5.
Mr. Hurley?
Yes.
179 students of how many in the high school?
Well, it's
Is that like...
AP, well, it's not 179 students, 179 tests.
Okay. So,
Okay. So I don't know exactly. I could get the number of students. It may even be here somewhere. But they're talking about, oh, no, I'm sorry. It is 179 students. I stand corrected. 296 tests. So I stand corrected on that. Okay. We have 770 students, but AP, for the most part, are only offered to seniors and a few junior classes.
But still, that's
So, yeah, it's, if you took the juniors and seniors together, you're probably at about 40-something%. So if you look at the chart, you'll see in 2014, we had 118 students, and then we have 179. And we had 207 exams up to 296. And yet, our percentages this year dropped a little bit, but still above what the state and the nation and global does. And the 92 and 88% were just extremely, extremely high. So we're doing very well with the AP test. I would also say that this year we added 2 very challenging AP test classes, an additional AP physics. So now we offer 2 different types of AP physics, and AP human geography, which is also a interdisciplinary type of course with sociology and geography and culture and history all together. And in the first year we did those courses, a little more challenging. But the AP program is strong and keeps drawing more and more students and more teachers who want to develop classes. Any questions there? And as I mentioned, we don't have the SAT or the ACT reports yet. Although the state requires the 60-day reporting, there is no requirement regarding the SAT and ACT, but once I get them, I will report them at the board meeting that follows. So I appreciate your patience, and if you have any questions now or down the road, I'll be happy to answer them. I don't really have any other report. I've been talking for about an hour and a half, other than to say that I thank all of you, and I thank the community, the faculty, the staff, for we use this word a lot, the due diligence that we've done as a community for the last 2-3 years to get to the vote tomorrow. I don't think there's much more to say. I mean, the people that are here, I think, have heard what we've had to say several times, and the people who are watching it will be watching it after the vote. But I do want to thank everybody. It's been a tremendous effort, a tremendous amount of work, tremendous amount of listening and discussing and talking and sharing and cajoling at times, and to get to this point. And hopefully the results will be favorable, but whatever the results are, I shared with you all the next week or 2 of what will be going up in my office and Mr. Kelly's office. Committee meetings, I think we will forego all committee meetings with the exception of the Strategic Planning and Communications Committee for October 15th. That's the only committee that will meet. At that meeting, I'll provide you with an update on either the meeting that Mr. Kelly and I will be having, or Mr. Kelly will be having, because I will be Thursday at my daughter's wedding, which is Friday, but I'll be there Thursday for the day of nerves. And Mr. Kelly will have the meeting, because that's when they were able to come in with the PSA and with Epic. And we'll be talking to the bond council hopefully Wednesday, and I'll report to the committee that night of what progress has been made and what process will be going forward. Should the result go in a different direction, I'll be reaching out to the committee and reaching out to all of you about how I think we should go about doing some, quick fact-finding. I'll meet with Dr. Fletcher's committee and do the same. And hopefully on October 15th, share with the committee where I think we should head, and then in discussion with the committee, share with the board on October 22nd where I think we should head going forward. So again, in the packet, I spelled that out. We'll see how things play out tomorrow, and then we'll go from there. And finally, that's the end of my report.
Can I just add that you should be complimented along with Mr. Kelly for working so hard and giving it all in our hopes to get the referendum passed.
Well, thank you.
Okay, we move on to the report of the president. And the first thing I was going to do was thank Mr. Hurley and Mr. Kelly for all the work they did on the referendum.
Sorry.
Well, you can keep. I don't mind hearing it a couple of times.
I think it is a gratitude that times 9 we could get each member to express, and we have some people here in the room that also have been very helpful in trying to get information out regarding the referendum, make sure the information is square and accurate and factual, and that's all greatly appreciated. I think that each of us spent time at public meetings, and it was clear that as much as you think you've communicated something and you think you've communicated it effectively, people have busy lives, and they just don't have a chance to take it all in, distill it, figure out what the details are until it's right in front of them. So it was really an outstanding effort, and I mentioned several times at several meetings how really we're all residents in town, and this has a huge impact on our personal lives, and the gentleman to my left and to my right don't fall into that same category, but they both just took tremendous ownership and do that on a daily basis, and that's impressive and humbling sometimes to watch, but much appreciated on behalf of the board and the town.
Thank you.
So, thank you. Regardless, as we say tomorrow, win, lose, draw. Yes, thank you. And then, I think we saw in the paper today, or over the weekend, the town has bonded to for some much needed work that we have in town, and they're looking at creative ways to finance it. But I think that it reinforces the importance of how this administration and board has gone after the proposal that will be voted on tomorrow. I think we were rightfully cognizant of and cautious about trying to make it the right cost. Maybe not the lowest cost, but the right cost to achieve our goals. And I think we can all be proud of the work that was done with that, and hopefully our comrades in town agree and support that. The 15th, I'll be back overseas, so I'll miss those meetings. The board's self-assessments, a reminder that the 22nd is our drop dead date to have those complete. So put them on your calendar for the 15th, and don't put that I have another week. Just put 15th. We want to get those done. And again, this year more important than all. They're always important because we learn a lot from them. You know, we try to do that. We try to make that, you know, critical self-assessment. This year, it's even more important because it's part of the CUSAC evaluation that will be done at the district. And if we miss it, we'll get you know, we'll put a bad mark on the district for that. That is all I'll say in regard to a report, as it were. I'd like to move into the next segment, which is opening our meeting to members of the public who may wish to make comment at 8:56 p.m. Please address your name and address.
Yep. Brian Ursulisi, I'm speaking to you as an employee of the district, as a supervisor, and who was somebody who was in the high school today on a very difficult day, and I just wanted to make sure you all understood how amazing the staff was when faced with something that just came out of the blue. It was a really difficult day for probably about 75% of our students who really struggled with emotions that they were not prepared for. And I just wanted you all to understand, I think it's a testament to the leadership of the building, Mr. Morano, Mr. DeBarry, teachers giving up time, giving up free periods, opening their classrooms so kids could have a safe place to be, because they just needed it. And I said this to the English teachers at the end of the day, I've never been prouder to work with a group of people than I was today. Because we can talk about park scores and we can talk about student achievement, and Mr. Hurley said this earlier. Today, we just got to see what kind of people our students are and our staff are, and I was just very proud of everybody. So I just wanted to make sure you all knew that it was a very tough day, but on the flip side of it, it was very heartening to see how caring our staff is.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You know, if I can, just quickly, promise quickly. When we had the security meetings last March after the shooting in Florida, and other security meetings we've had over the time, you know, I've often said that I know that we would be equipped to handle emergencies, and I know that because we've dealt with horrific days like this before and other things that have happened. And we have in our security manual guidance about how to deal with an unexpected death of a student. And the protocol of who gets called, what happens, what you do, how do you announce to the students, how do you announce to everybody, and, you know, we drill everything. I mean, people, you know, when I say this at meetings, and sometimes people look at me and think we're kidding, and you know, yes, everything you said is true, but it doesn't just happen by accident. It's because when Mr. Morano called me and I started reviewing, he said, I already looked at that, I already did that, I already knew this. You know, there's a protocol, and you never want to do any of these things, right? You never hope none of it ever happens. But when it does, I do think it's important to remind people that this is school safety and security too. It's not just those horrific things that you hear in the news. And we take the time to drill it, to review it, to have it at fingertips reach, so that in the event it happens, we can go and get it. And so yeah, kudos to everybody. It's congratulations you never want to give, but kudos to everybody.
Yeah, thank you. And I think it's you know, it's the process, the protocols and such. And I think we all recognize it's also, though, going above and beyond that with the compassion. And really, you know, we have seen this, unfortunately, had to see it several times in the past few years of how our staff rallies around our students. And it's part of what makes the district special, I think.
I think so.
I think we as adults and maybe as board and administration, you know, we hope we find points in time where we might inspire students, might inspire staff, but in reality, when it comes the other way, and they're inspiring us, I think that's when it hits home the most. So thank you for your comments. Well noted. Thank you. Yes, Shelley.
I just wanted to, Brian addressed what I was going to say, and so did you, but just to show you how upsetting this is, when I was a student teaching in the 8th grade, this one, I had like 30 kids, and it was one girl there who was really tough and everything, and the class was a little, unruly in the beginning, and she just like was told, just be quiet, that kind of thing. And after that, there was no problem in the classroom. And one day I came in, everyone was crying. And she walked home on the tracks to have a cigarette, and she was hit by a train and dragged like a mile. And when I had to write the report from my student thing, the teacher said to me, my teacher in Seton Hall, the question was a difficult situation and how you handled it. So I wrote it, and she said, this is not educational. And she gave me a C on the report. So, just listening to what I hear today, I'm so proud of this town that they're addressing that there are needs that people don't, to handle grief, because I never had it.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. Okay, well, I'll take a deep breath.
I'm sorry.
And I'll ask if there are any further comments from the public this evening. Seeing none, we will close the floor for comment at some time that my clock is no longer showing. Thank you. At 9:02. And we'll move on to the order of the agenda. And if you're prepared, Mrs.
Yes.
Ahmed, we'll ask you to
I'm
please
ready to
walk
go.
us through personnel.
Okay, fine. I'd like to move 1, Tatiana Cruzado, resignation. 2, Leslie Getta, resignation for a teacher assistant at the high school. 3, Kevin Sanchez, approval for instrumental teacher at Pierpont. 4, Brian Pickard, approved maintenance man. 5, Jennifer Capuana, to approve her as a special ed long-term sub. 6, substitute teachers, approval of substitute teachers as listed below. 7, substitute teacher assistants, approval of sub-teacher assistants just to Jesse Scheichenberg and Maria Valenti. 8, Title I instructors, to approve the following teachers for number 1 program, and they're listed for Washington, Lincoln, and Pierpont School. Number 9, salary level changes due to additional credits. 6, elementary co-curricular. This was a little volunteer advisor to Pierpont School Green Team for the 2018-19. I'm going to ask you about that later.
Okay.
11, high school co-curricular, to rescind and to approve the following as listed. 12, coaches, Michael Fogno, I never know how to say that name. Fogno, for swimming boys and girls assistant coach. 13, technology training for the network administrators and network technician for the 18-19 school year through software training. And 14, Danica Schmedding, to approve her early return as listed. And 16, Elaine Lopez, to approve part-time bus assistant. And, yeah, the number 10, can you explain that, the green team?
Green Team is an environmental club. It's, deals with environmental issues, ecology. I'm sorry.
Since these have been formally moved, I'm looking for a second. Seconded by Mrs. Librera. And now, any questions?
The Green Team is what I said, is an environmental club, ecology club, and we have one in the other buildings, and that individual who's going to advise the club is a new teacher assistant working in the building. He probably has an interest in it, and kids have an interest, and he'll do it as an unpaid.
Thank you. Any question? And did we get the? Yes. Okay. Did we any other questions regarding personnel action items 1 through 16? Seeing none.
Just for the record, in case anybody watching questions, the Title I salaries, they're paid for by Title I funding. So every year when we appoint Title I teachers, that's part of the grant that comes in from Title I. That's where the funding comes.
Thank you. If there are no other questions, we would ask the secretary to please poll the board.
Mrs. Ahmed?
Yes.
Dr. Alati?
Yes.
Mr. Healy?
Yes.
Mrs. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Cabrera?
Yes.
Mr. Mazzone?
Yes.
Dr. Racine?
Yes.
Mr. Rowland?
Yes.
Mr. McLean?
Yes.
Motion's carried. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to curriculum and instruction. Mrs. Jones, would you please take us through that?
Yes. There are 5 resolutions under curriculum instruction for board member consideration. 1, out-of-district placements. There are for 5 students, totaling $217,512.36. Resolution 2 is the approval of field trips, now numbering 44. Resolution 3 is for the emergency bus evacuation drills for the kindergarten K Center. Resolution 4, the school climate committee, which is appointments to the staff from Lincoln, Washington, Pierpont, Union, and Rutherford High School. And resolution number 5 has to do with home instruction for 3 students.
Thank you. And we can have a general discussion before these are formally moved. Anybody with general discussion points they'd like to raise?
Just for a point of clarity, what the school climate committee is, it's not about the weather. It used to be called the school safety, school crisis team. Now it's changed to more school climate, with the idea of doing more preventative activities like wellness and so on, in addition to responding to crisis and things of that nature.
I would like to just call attention to, Mrs. Jones mentioned there's a list of 44 field trips, which is always good to see. I noticed that I didn't do an exact count, but 4 or 5 of them are for the Bulldog Academy, which I think are likely the more functionally valuable field trips frequently. And so I don't know if you have any comments on it or just a general.
Well, the Bulldog Academy does a lot of work in the community. They go to the mall. They go to the YMCA. They go to hotels to work. They go to different places, to restaurants to have lunch, and the functional adult lifestyle. So you'll see more of them as they come through. And it's what makes the program vital. And if you're around during the day and you're on Park Avenue, you'll see the kids and the teacher out. They're out of the building as much as they're in, which is what they should be doing.
That's great. It really gratifying to see that list and see the inclusion of that. So would you
I move resolutions 1 through 5 for curriculum and instruction.
Is there a second? Mr. Healy? Last chance for questions or comments. Hearing none, I would ask the secretary to please poll the board.
Mrs. Ahmed?
Yes.
Dr. Alati?
Yes.
Mr. Healy?
Yes.
Mrs. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Cabrera?
Yes.
Mr. Mazzone?
Yes.
Dr. Racine?
Yes.
Mr. Rowland?
Yes.
Mr. McLean?
Yes.
Motion's carried. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving right into finance, Mrs. Librera, can you take us through that?
Sure. There are 7 motions tonight in the finance section of the agenda. Several of them standard monthly business. Would like to call out a few. Number 4, outstanding checks. The write-off of checks that have been outstanding for greater than 1 year in general payroll, agency, and student activities accounts, effective October 1, 2018. Number 5, to accept grant funds from the Bergen County Utilities Authority Environmental Awareness Challenge Grant for Lincoln School in the amount of $1,000. And then we have 2 motions that go together. One is to rescind the extraordinary aid motion from September 10th, 2018 meeting, and to pass motion 7, which is an amended extraordinary aid motion as listed. And so I would ask that Mr. Kelly just explain the reason for the adjustment.
Yeah, honestly, I wish I knew. I just happened to go in and see that they had they had revised that report. I think the state found a little more money to put in extraordinary aid. And just to give you a sense of context here, the original award was 50.1% of the total application that we had submitted, and as you know, you're supposed to fund 100%. Well, now it's gone from 50.1 up to 50.3, so we can celebrate that. But it's...
Okay.
And for those watching, it amounted to about $2,600 in additional.
Yeah, there was no explanation, nothing, that's all I can really piece
Okay.
together.
Okay. Thanks for the explanation. So yes, I move numbers 1 through 7.
And seconded by Dr. Racine. Last opportunity for questions or comments on Finance 1 through 7. Having none, ask the Secretary to please poll the board.
Mrs. Ahmed?
Yes.
Dr. Alati?
Yes.
Mr. Healy?
Yes.
Mrs. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Cabrera?
Yes.
Mr. Mazzone?
Yes.
Dr. Racine?
Yes.
Mr. Rowland?
Yes.
Mr. McLean?
Yes.
Motion's carried. Thank you.
Thank you. Under policy this evening, Mr. Healy.
Yeah, we had no committee meetings since our last board meeting, and we have no policy motions tonight.
Thank you. Any general questions for Mr. Healy regarding any policy-related issue? No? Thank you. Moving then to building and grounds, Mr. Mazzone.
Yes, as like policy, we've not had a committee meeting, and therefore I have no items for this evening to put forward.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Mazzone? No, and not listed, but the Committee of Strategic Planning and Communications, Dr. Racine?
There'll be an update next meeting.
Thank you. So we'll move now. Yes?
I just wanted to follow up under personnel. Did we put items?
It was moved. I missed it. She went very fast with that one. I missed it as well, but I was told it was included.
It was
perfect. Yeah. So then we move on to old business, which is really also new business. Any issue that any member of the board would like to bring to conversation before the board? No?
I'm just going to pass this around. I forgot to give it to you. There's that page that on the report that needs to be corrected. And also, if anybody is interested, this Saturday, the high school is sponsoring a marching band competition at Tryon Field from 5 to 9 o'clock. And I have passes here that gets you and a guest in for free. So I'll leave it here. If anybody's interested, you want to take one? You want?
Thank you. I just like to add, we did have a report tonight, and we saw that of all the grants that the REF has given to our teachers for help that they can give our students, and many are very enjoyable ones. They're putting the extras the board can't afford. The the REF is having their casino night on Friday, November 2nd. If you care to get tickets, you know who to go to. I will be happy to give you the information. They email the tickets. They're not using paper tickets any longer, so they can save money there and send it, keep the money for the teacher grants. Thank you. That would be good.
Thank you. A couple of points that I would like to possibly discuss, depending on the interest in discussion. One of the things that we've done this year and built into the calendar moving forward in the academic year, but I don't think we really discussed it at a board level, so I'd like to have that discussion in case someone feels differently. We had, due to the need to move through, an anticipated need to move through a lot of agenda items, we're not going to have every building presenting to the board every year, and we're looking at maybe you would explain.
We thought we'd do the high school and I didn't write it down. High school, Washington, and I think we're doing Union this year, and then we'll do the other three next year. I think it's to help us with staying on target with our meetings, but also, the programs. You hear the report about language arts and math scores and science scores. This is to bring special programs forward, and we don't want to get redundancy, so it keeps it a little fresher, and a little, and for the teachers and the principals also, a little less pressure of doing a command performance every year.
And so, technically, it's the superintendent and the president of the board who set the agendas, but did not want to make it in a unilateral type of fashion. I wanted, if anyone had a strong disagreement with that, to just discuss it. And I mean, I know we always enjoy the presentations, but as Mr. Hurley said, it's not always a practical issue that every year they're trying to prepare one for us. So we'll hit about about a 2-year cycle, I guess.
Yeah, and in the 6 or 7 meetings we have, or whatever the number may be, after you do the reorg meeting, we will still have 4, because I'll still have not guidance, so IT and special services present one night, more of a supervisor report. So, then I'm also up against the budget presentation and other presentations. And to be optimistic, when the referendum goes forward, we'll be doing updates on project plans and timelines and things of that nature too. So I think it's a little healthier use of the board's time, and I think and this came from the administrators. They asked for it. So
okay, I just want to make sure we're all on the same page with that. The other point would be our the format we've been using now for over a year on the board meetings. I don't know in general if anybody has comments or suggestions that we need to think about doing any different way. Are we satisfied with the way our meetings progress? No roused from the rabble here, so we're good. Okay, and then one point I would like to ask Mr. Hurley to address, and I'm sorry for springing this on you, but it was something that came up during the course of public meetings, talking about the referendum, and at several meetings or in individual conversations, I would get questions as to why there were no specific components of security listed in the referendum. And my response was that we address security on an ongoing basis inside our annual budget. That there are in fact some elements inside the referendum which are not specifically spelled out, but as any new constructions going on, the doors and such that are installed are going to be thinking ahead of or thinking and reacting to security issues, and the concept of having the option of a closed lunch is a security related issue. But I don't know if you have any.
Well, again, I think your answers were on target. This year we changed all of our cameras and buzz-in entry systems at every school. This year we, with the cooperation of the Rutherford Police Department, have all new visitor passes that are different from other passes we have, and have a new system of signing them out and then having to return them, so that we know if a person's in the building or they've left the building. And we've had a couple people not return them, and because we they have to put a name and address and phone number, we've called them and had them bring them back. So there's a constant, as you suggested, review of security plans, and that on October 8th, workshop day for the faculty and staff, I'll be meeting with Chief Russo for the better part of the afternoon to review some amendments and additions to our security plan. We also added 4 or 5 new wrinkles this year to the plan. And again, these are not things that we announce, because you don't want to announce how you're doing this drill differently or how you're putting kids in a different place, or but so that first part of the answer is accurate. The second part of your answer, yes, any of the new construction will have the ability for cameras. Will have whatever the standard is, whether it's be glass, window, door entry. The gyms, if they're built, will have the ability to shut off from the rest of the building, so nighttime use. You don't have to have the building accessible. Anything that is part of security would be up to standard and code. We're not replacing or doing construction in the main entrances of buildings, so there was no money in the referendum for that. and updating cameras and things like that. Our cameras are functional. They're not as good as they should be. They're not as new as they should be. But, they're an expensive proposition, and as long as ours are working and they're adequate, we've looked into different things like grants and other ways of upgrading them. We've talked to the police several times about it. One of the upgrades, we may be able to upgrade more, everything works connection, when the police station gets built, because some of the things that we'd want to upgrade in terms of police having access to the actual video feeds is also tied into what's on their end. So if we have it on our end, but they don't have it on their end, it doesn't work. So we're addressing security in the manner I said in the new plans. We address it on an ongoing basis. We try to work within budget. We try to work with local authorities. We also try to work in common sense of what really is needed and what we feel would be work, and not just, something that looks good but maybe isn't as functional as it needs to be. So I think that's a fair answer that you gave.
Thank you. And I mean, for me, the reason to bring it up was to make sure that, first of all, for all of us, it's clear, as we said, we don't publicize with great detail the measures we take on a security front, but we're active working on it. They're in constant review, as we said. And I just think it would be important, particularly if somebody's watching, and for the members of the public that are here to understand that.
And the comment I didn't address, but the comment about the potential for a closed lunch, I think has been bantered about a little bit, depending on what side of the fence you're on this referendum. But it's hard for me to fathom how people can't see, even if we stayed with an open lunch, how people can't understand that is a security concern and a safety concern. And even today, when we dealing with the family and dealing with in terms of the loss, when we finally were comfortable that the family was comfortable with us sharing it with the student body, because you want to respect the family's wishes, right? We were up against lunch, and the kids were going to leave the building. So we decided that hopefully they didn't hear about it on the street or in the store with no adult there to guide them. But we also didn't want to tell the student body 10 minutes before they're going to walk out on the street. Because when we met with the student body, or what the administrators did, for most of the afternoon, they were in the hallway or in the auditorium or in the cafeteria with counselors. And again, it's not just the big issues of security that we talk about when you can't keep kids in the building when maybe it's a good reason to keep them in the building. So is interesting that the one aspect of security is in the plan. People don't like, and they're asking why there isn't more security in the plan, but some people don't like. But again, Mr. President, you gave a very good answer to the question, so you didn't even need me to comment.
I always need the little reinforcement that I haven't blundered, so that's good. Okay. That was the point. Yes, Mrs. Smith.
While we were talking about security, on the side of the building, the neighbors had said to me, if the new referendum is going to do something with that 6 foot, it's like a drop on the side of the building, because they're always afraid that the kids are going to fall in there after school.
Yeah, we had talked about that, and we looked into addressing it now, and it was a rather costly and challenging fix. But
How are you going to fix that, though, if the windows for the bottom floor?
Well, that's why I'm an English teacher, not an architect. But that's going to be corrected.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments before we move on to the next item? No? Then I would ask Mrs. Jones if there's a legislative update of any.
Well, I'll just go over a couple of things, but on your ballot on November 6th, there will be the question of the Securing Our Children's Future Bond Act, which authorized the issuance of $500 million in general obligation bonds for the following purposes: $350 million for county vocational schools, district career and technical education grants, $50 million for county college career and technical education, and 100 for school district water infrastructure improvement grants. That is on the ballot for the public to vote on. The other ones...
Can I comment on that before you move on?
Certainly.
Okay. Because I know that you mentioned that in a couple of meetings, and they changed the name. What's the name of it now? It's a very nice, catchy name. They changed it.
Let me just read it from the ballot.
Yeah.
I got my...
no, just read. What's the name of the bill? That's what I...
Securing our children's future.
Right, securing our children's future, right. And what it was called before that was vocational education grant. And they changed the name. And they changed the name because there was a lot of pushback and debate about vocational ed getting money. That money's going to go to Bergen Academy. And it's going to, the discussion we've had about the way they get the funding to do the things that draw some of our kids up there, the money's going there. The only money that's going to go to regular ed schools, and again, I'm not endorsing or not endorsing this. I'm just stating the facts so people understand it. The only money that would go to districts like us would be if we developed a partnership with the vocational school to have a program that either they'd have to come in and do here, which ultimately would cost money, or we send kids to their program. And so again, I mean, it's up to everybody's opinion whether they think that's a good idea or not, but districts like Rutherford and districts like, we wouldn't really see a direct benefit of that at all. Now, on the other hand, the vocational schools have been cut a lot, and have become academies and not really vocational schools anymore. If the money went to really go back to the old school vocational schools, that's a different story, but it's an interesting proposal is what I'm saying.
It is on the ballot, securing our children's future bond.
Right. On November's ballot.
Right. I'm sorry?
On November's ballot.
Correct. The other ones I have talked about, 3-point seatbelts on school buses, the opioid overdose prevention, school bus safety, school security panic alarms, I think I remember mentioning. The one that's coming up, though, that's not approved, but it might be interested, and we do it, Videotaping Board of Ed Meetings Act would require municipalities and boards of education to record public meetings and post recordings on the internet. The NJSBA sought amendments to make the bill permissive, as it is currently an unfunded mandate, and sought clarification of the requirement to videotape closed session minutes. The bill was released from Assembly, State, and local committee committees on September 17th. So that's coming up. However that goes, and also a depression screening would require Board of Education to ensure that students in grades 7 through 12 annually receive health screening for depression. Those are just one.
And one very quick comment on the bus.
Just, by the way, it's just in your school board notes.
Right.
So there's a synopsis of what I can say.
One quick comment on this seatbelts, the 3-prong. Went to a meeting a week or two ago in which this was a topic that was addressed, and the law that was passed talks about buses manufactured and purchased after February 2019. And there's understandably folks talking about retrofitting older buses, which would be very, very expensive.
Right.
However, what has since come out is that the bus manufacturers of those buses that don't have those kind of harness said that is the type of seat that's required to be in a bus to have that kind of harness is not the type of seat that's in those buses, and therefore they would not warranty or guarantee that any retrofitted seatbelt would actually be functioning correctly. So I think people have to understand that it's like a round peg in a square, whatever that saying is, right? Square hole. So and that's the reality that they and insurance companies might not okay it if you're trying to retrofit something that's not meant to be retrofitted. So I think that's why the law that came out, aside from the cost factor, didn't talk about retrofitting buses. It talked about new manufacture. but it'll be up to me and directors of transportation and boards of education to be able to answer why perhaps retrofitting is not feasible and may not even be allowable under insurance and manufacturers.
Any questions on legislative updates? No, then we'll move on to our second period of public comment at 9:30 and open the floor to any member of the public wishing to make a comment. Seeing no one moving fast, we're going to close the meeting to public comment at 9:31. My clock changed. And do we still have need for an executive session at this point? No. Then I would entertain a motion to adjourn by Mrs. Librera and seconded by Dr. Racine. And we'll do a voice vote. All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Like Joe DiMaggio.
We're out of session. Thank you.
If you miss a meeting.